Good morning. Today is September 22nd, 2020, and this is the Blue Earth County Board of Commissioners meeting. We are going to start out with our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Go to our agenda review, Bob.
Mr. Chair, there are no changes to the agenda today.
I'll move the agenda.
I'll second the
Got
review.
a motion and a second. Any discussion? Jesse, could you call the roll?
Commissioner Purvis,
Aye.
Commissioner People,
Aye.
Commissioner Stuenberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer,
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder.
Aye.
All right. We will go directly to our County Veterans Service Officer, Mr. Mike McLaughlin. You have an enhancement grant.
Morning, Michael.
Yep.
Morning,
Michael.
Morning, Mike. I can't see your face with that camouflage on.
Yeah, Marine Corps camouflage.
That's why that's why he has it.
On here, so if anyone watching online heard that, we just had some new mics and stuff put into our boardroom, so obviously our IT issues might have to work through this meeting. But Mike, go ahead.
I think there's a joke there about Marines and technology.
As soon as you said Marine, I think it happened
The whole
too.
thing melts down. Good morning. I'm here today to ask the board to accept a resolution before you that will allow the Blue Earth County Veterans Service Office to enter into the operational enhancement grant with the Minnesota Department of Veteran Affairs. Something we've done every year. It's $12,500, and that allows our office to use those funds in a pretty flexible manner for credentialing, equipment around the office, supplies, some service delivery, advertising. You might have heard this spring with the implementation of a lot of assistance under the COVID pandemic. We had some advertising on the radio that got some low service grant deliveries out on the local airways. So that's more or less what we'll be using it again for the upcoming year. It is kind of a flexible grant just because the state is understanding that things change throughout the year. So what we put down in the initial grant application for education, equipment, supplies, and the marketing can change, and they're flexible with it too. So it is a nice enhancement to the department and something we can use to supplement services throughout the year too. So any questions?
I'll move approval of the grant.
I'll move a second.
Got a motion, you got a second, any discussion? No discussion. I will say that this grant is really a benefit. This is where you get your billboards across. Veterans get to see these billboards and know who they can contact, especially if you're coming in from outside of the county, you don't know who to contact. It's really a benefit to the veterans across the state and across the nation. Because if you're coming in from out of state, you come into Blue Earth County, you see that billboard and oh, that's who I have to contact. So it's really a plus, and I know it helps you with your different computers and different issues you have, just really helps the veteran services. And anything we can do to help the veterans is a plus. So.
Sure. Yeah, and in the past we have used it to purchase laptops and mobility type equipment so we can do outreach and work remotely and be able to go when we could go into nursing homes and service a lot of our elderly veterans and spouses in the area. We were using that grant to help keep up on that technology and give us that capacity too. So it is definitely a flexibility grant in operation, so we appreciate the partnership with the state.
Okay. Any other discussion? Jesse, could you call a roll, please?
Commissioner Purvis.
Aye.
Commissioner People.
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer.
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder.
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg.
Aye. Thank you very much, and thanks for bringing
Thanks,
this up.
Michael.
I know we had a couple years at before your time, the pre-Mike, that this wasn't brought up, and it's a real plus to have this done and help our veterans out. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment, Mr. Chair? I assume all of you saw in the paper about Mr. Seehee getting an award.
Yeah.
Mike and his father, Tom McLaughlin, were the people that made that happen, so
Oh,
thank you,
that's
Mike.
awesome.
Saw that.
Thank you, Mike.
Yep.
That's wonderful.
I would say he's the person that made that happen, Normandy and Pearl Harbor.
But
so-
somebody needed to do the paperwork.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
It's a joy for us to have him in our area, and thanks for being able to recognize him and for what he did. So that's really a plus. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah,
You
nice
bet.
job.
Thanks, Mike. Have a good day.
Thank you, Mike.
Go ahead, George.
Morning, George.
Morning, George.
Morning.
Morning, Commissioners.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. PC 17-20 is a request from the Mito Evangelical Lutheran Church and Lindeland Farms. It is for review and approval of the transfer of residential development right from the southeast quarter of the northeast quarter of Section 26 Mito Township to the northwest quarter of the northwest quarter of Section 25 Mito Township. The properties involved are zoned agricultural. Staff presented the report. The applicants were represented. There was no other public comment. Following the discussion and a roll call vote, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the request to the County Board with the conditions presented and to adopt the findings prepared by staff, and the board action is a resolution.
All right. Is this a public hearing, Bob?
yes, yes.
It's a public hearing. At this time, if there's anyone on the phone that wishes to talk on PC 17-20, could you please give your name? And please keep her down to 3 minutes. Anybody?
This is Susan Splinter.
Go ahead.
This is Susan Splinter, and I represent Mito Lutheran Church. And we would just like to thank you for hearing and considering our request, and to thank George for all the work he and the Planning Committee our commission have done to consider our request.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and thanks for all the work you do.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak on PC 17-20? One more time, is there anyone else that would like to speak on PC 17-20? We'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board.
Brunder will move approval.
Purvis seconds.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, Brunder, I just have a comment. I think this is going to be very beneficial to this piece of property. You'll be able to get it on the market a little easier and get it sold. So this will be a big help to them, and I think it'll be a good fit for that area.
Okay. Anyone else? Jesse, could you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Purvis.
Aye.
Commissioner People.
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer.
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder.
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg.
Aye. Go ahead, George. PC 18-20.
PC 18-20 is a request from Mitchell Abbas for review and approval of the preliminary plat of the Mitch Abbas subdivision number 3. The proposal is a replat of a portion of the Mitch Abbas subdivision number 2 and will consist of one lot and one outlot. The property is zoned agricultural and is located in the east half of the southeast quarter of Section 17 Cambria Township and the west half of the southwest quarter of Section 16 Cambria Township. Staff presented the report. The applicants were represented. There was no other public comment. The Planning Commission expressed no concern with the request. Following the discussion and a roll call vote, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the request to the county board with the conditions presented. And the board action is a resolution.
All right. This will be a public hearing, and if there's anyone on the phone that would wish to speak on PC 18-20, please give your name and keep her down to 3 minutes, please. Anyone?
This is Carol and Mitch. Hello?
Go ahead.
Oh, this is Carol and Mitch Abbott, and we are all good with what's going on, and we thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Carol. Anyone else that wishes to speak on PC 18-20? One more time, does anyone else like to speak on PC 18-20? Hearing no one, I'll bring it back to the board.
Purvis moves approval. People seconds.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Not hearing any discussion. Jesse, could you call a roll, please?
Commissioner Purvis.
Aye.
Commissioner People.
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer.
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder.
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg.
Aye. Thank you. Now we go to PC 19-20, Crystal Valley Co-op.
PC 19-20 is a request from Crystal Valley Cooperative for review and approval of the final plat of Crystal Valley subdivision. The proposed subdivision plat will create 2 lots within the Highway Business Zone District. The property is in the northeast quarter of Section 6, Garden City Township. Staff presented the report. The applicants were represented and had no additional comment. There was no other public comment. The Planning Commission members had no objections to the request. Following the discussion, in a roll call vote, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the request to the County Board with the conditions presented and to adopt the findings prepared by staff. And the board action is a resolution.
We'll move on to the public hearing. Is there anyone on the phone that would like to speak on PC 19-20? Anyone that on the phone? Okay, go ahead.
Yep. Hi, this is Nate Mira from Bolton and Mencken Mankato. I'm the project manager on this project and can answer any questions that you would have if you have any.
All right. Well, if there's any questions, we'll get back to you, okay?
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for being on the phone. Anyone else that would like to speak on PC 19-20? One more time, is there anyone on the phone that would like to speak to PC 19-20? Hearing no one else, I'll bring it back to the board.
Purvis moves approval.
Landcamer seconds.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or any questions? Hearing none, Jesse, could you call the roll?
Commissioner Purvis.
Aye.
Commissioner People.
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer.
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder.
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg.
Aye. And that passes. We'll go to PC 20-20. Go ahead, George.
PC 20-20 is a request from Cheryl Keitzer, Reggie Reed, the Lori S. Bowles Revocable Living Trust. The request is for review and approval of the final plat of Shady Tree Estates Number 2. The request is a replat of Lot 4, Block 1, and Outlot A of Shady Tree Estates, and will reconfigure Lot 4, Block 1 to include a portion of Outlot A. The property is zoned rural residence and is within the Shoreland Overlay District of Lake Washington. The property is located in the northeast quarter of Section 19, Jamestown Township. Staff presented the report. The applicants were represented. There was no public comment. The Planning Commission expressed no issues with the request. Following the discussion and a roll call vote, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the request to the County Board with the conditions presented and to adopt the findings prepared by staff. and the board action is a resolution.
All right. We will now go to a public hearing. Is there anyone on the phone that would like to speak on PC 20-20? Anyone on the
Hi
phone?
again, County Board. Sorry to
ahead.
interrupt you again. This is Nate Mira from Fulton and Mink. I'm also the project manager on this project. I can also answer any questions that you would have on this project if you have any.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak on PC 20-20? One more time, is there anyone else that would like to speak on PC 20-20? Seeing no one, hearing no one, bring it back to the board.
Brunder will move approval.
People will second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Jesse, could you call a roll, please?
Commissioner Purvis.
Aye.
Commissioner People.
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer.
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder.
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg.
Aye. Our next is PC 22-20.
PC 22-20 is a request from Blue Earth County for review and approval of amendments to Blue Earth County Code of Ordinances, Chapter 24, zoning, to establish standard setbacks from county ditches, county tile, and railroad rights-of-way. The proposed setback from the county ditches and county tile is 75 feet. Structures other than feedlots which have their own setback. The proposed setback from a railroad right-of-way is 50 feet for all structures. Staff presented the report. There was no public comment and little discussion by the Planning Commission. Following the discussion and a roll call vote, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the proposed amendments to the County Board, and the board action is the ordinance.
All right. This again is a public hearing, and is there anyone on the phone that wish to speak on PC 22-20? Anyone that would wish to speak on PC 22-20? One more time. Anyone that would wish to speak on PC 22-20? Hearing no one, I'll bring it back to the board.
Brunder will move approval.
Purvis seconds.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
a lot of these we didn't have a lot of discussion on because two of them were from the preliminary plats that were done last month. And this one here is just a cleanup of some language that we're trying to get done, so I appreciate the staff trying to pull a couple of these in every now and then and mix them in amongst all the other stuff we have to do, because we had a busy schedule the last couple planning and zoning meetings, and thank goodness that they've been fairly non-controversial, because it's very difficult to have these conversations via phone and Zoom, especially when you're dealing with a lot of the rural areas. So I appreciate the staff working forward on some of these items and getting them done. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Jesse, could you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Purvis.
Aye.
Commissioner People.
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer.
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder.
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you
Thanks.
very
Thank
much.
you, George. Thank you, George.
And our next up is the Watonwan River Watershed Plan Public Hearing. We'll get Julie and Mike in here.
Morning, Julie and Mike.
Yeah, morning,
Morning.
Julie and Mike.
It's the Julie and Mike show.
Yeah.
It's mostly the Julie show. I'm here to take notes if she needs any help.
That's
Well,
our-
she's the star, she's the star here, the co-star.
Well, at this time, we'll open the Watonwan River Comprehensive Watershed Management Plan Public Hearing. Staff from Blue Earth County Property Environmental Resources are here to answer questions regarding the plan. This hearing provides an opportunity for citizens and representatives from governmental entities to submit comment regarding
statute. At the start of the process, an invitation to submit priority concerns was sent to all city and township clerks and the Board of Water and Soil Resources, the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, the Minnesota Department of Health, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and the DNR. There was a public meeting and an online survey in February of 2018 to help identify priority issues. There were 3 committees and a consultant who facilitated meetings and prepared the plan content. There was a policy committee of elected officials from the counties and SWCDs, a steering team of staff from the counties and the SWCDs, and the Board of Water and Soil Resources. And then there was an advisory committee that had citizens, staff from the 6 counties and SWCDs, and a state agency rep from the Minnesota Board of Water and Soil Resources, the Minnesota Department of Health, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and the DNR. The citizens on the advisory committee were primarily farmers. Overall, there were more than 80 committees, meetings of these 3 committees. The plan content contains priority areas and measurable goals for the 10-year duration of the plan. The Watonwan River watershed is broken down into 10 smaller sub-watersheds, and those were prioritized. Within each of the 10 sub-watersheds, there are priority areas for practices and projects designed to reduce sediment nutrients. The priority areas and the estimate pollutant reductions were determined by a model that was used by the consultant. The Blue Earth County Water Management Plan priorities for addressing groundwater, wetlands, habitat, and natural resources are summarized in the Watonwan Plan, and references to related sections of the Blue Earth County Water Management Plan, and those sections were added to the Watonwan Plan appendix. Now, the next steps in the process, after the public hearings are completed by each county, testimony from the public hearings will be reviewed by the steering team, and if necessary, changes to the plan will be made to address errors or omissions. And the policy committee will then forward the plan to the Board of Water and Soil Resources for a final 90-day review. And after the Board of Water and Soil Resources approves the plan, the county boards and SWCDs can adopt the plan. The Watonwan Watershed Plan will be a substitute for the Blue Earth County Water Management Plan in the Watonwan Watershed.
All right. At this time, we will open the public comment portion of the hearing. Public comment portion of the hearings allow for an opportunity for citizens to address the county board in a public setting. If you're listening via the conference call and would like to make a public comment, please state your name and address for the record. This is a public meeting with a set agenda, therefore please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Is there anyone that would like to comment on the Watonwan River Comprehensive Watershed Management Plan?
Yeah, this is Jared Bach with the Blue Earth Soil and Water.
Yes,
I just
Jared.
would like to the county board and the SWCD board for their involvement and effort in this planning process, and specifically Julie Conrad for her time and effort going above and beyond at times to make sure that the resource concerns for Blue Earth SWCD and the citizens in the Watonwan watershed are incorporated into this bigger plan. The SWCD has reviewed the plan, and we approve and agree and support the plan. And
All right. Is there anyone else that would like to comment on the Watonwan River Comprehensive Watershed Management Plan? One more time. Is there anyone online that would like to comment on the Watonwan River Comprehensive Watershed Management Plan? If not, we will close the public comment portion of the hearing, and I will take it to the board.
Purvis moves approval. People seconds.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments from the board?
Purvis would like to make a comment.
Go, please.
Julie, I'd just like to thank you for your hard work and compliment you on the work you did. This has been a long, tedious process, and you've represented Blue Earth County very well in that process.
And Mr. Chair, I would like to echo that, and that hopefully this will work better than even plans before. I mean, it's a little different approach, but yeah, you did a lot of work, and we should carry forward with the plan and see how it goes.
This is Colleen. I would also like to thank Julie and Will. I know this has not been an easy process, and I appreciate the work that's gone into it. I know this is a change. We used to have a water plan, and now we have watershed plans.
Right.
We figured the Watton one will cost us a little less than $20 million over 10 years. There is some money from Bowser for the next 2 years, hopefully about $700,000, if the state doesn't cut that. It hasn't been given to us yet. It's been out. They've got it in their budget. Well, I think it's important that we have good water plans. This is also another unfunded mandate for all intents and purposes, so it's something to think about. When you look at the county budget, we get unfunded mandates that the county has to fill, so just wanted to make that point.
Good point.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Brunder, again, thank you, Julie, for all your hard work, and the SWCD for their input on this. Will and I are both on that board, and we've been to several meetings, and this has been talked about several times. I think we all understand this is going to be a little bit of a challenge, but I think with Julie heading it up on Blue Earth County side, I think we got the best person working on it, so thank you, Julie.
Yeah. And this is one of 5 watersheds in Blue Earth County, so thank you, Kip, Will, and Julie.
Yes. Well, not much more I can say that would not echo what everybody else said, but thank you, Julie, for all your hard work on this. All right. Seeing no more, Jesse, could you call a roll, please?
Commissioner Purvis.
Aye.
Commissioner People.
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer.
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder.
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg.
Aye. And I thank you very much, and the public hearing now is closed.
Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Julie.
And
Thank
thanks,
you, Julie.
And Michael.
All right. Our next thing is Human Services. Is Phil out there?
He's on his way.
All right.
Morning, Phil.
Good morning.
Good morning, Phil.
And Kelly.
Kelly?
Kelly?
We have the Phil and Kelly Show.
That's right.
All right.
A popular demand.
Well, I can see that we have no action items.
That's correct.
What's going on with
I
you,
know, isn't that
Phil?
weird?
It's
It's, you needed a break from, ran out of ink, something like that.
It's a lull before that.
Yes.
But please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, as the chair said, we don't have action items, which is unusual. Maybe the calm before the storm at the end of the year. We did go to 2-year cycles on contracting, so I think that it's really helped with some of the volume issues, because sometimes it took a long time just to try to get through the list. So, I do have some informational discussion items, and actually these will go fairly quickly as well, and we'll ask Kelly to come up and give us an update on the COVID-related issues that we've been facing on a day-to-day basis. This is all information related to Children and Family Services that I have for you today. The first slide, I'm just going to show the ones that kind of the big splash points on each of the graphics. The first one, percentage of child victims by maltreatment category. You'll see that the volume on the right hand of that pie chart, 60%, has to do with neglect. And so we see high volumes of parental neglect in that, usually parental neglect in that area. So that's the volume. And then all the ones on the left side, the threatened injury, the sexual abuse, and physical abuse are more of the egregious cases. So they together kind of equal the volume, but they have a lot more severity. And you'll see that also represented in the maltreatment interventions on the right side of the graphic, that by statute, we do family investigations for the more serious matters, usually, well, always involving law enforcement, see if there's criminal parts to that as well. And then the family assessment, which kind of correlates with the neglect part. You'll see that we were at 98.7% of staff seeing children according to statutory guidelines. For family assessment, we have 120 hours to be in front of the family. And for family investigations, it's 24 hours. Talked to the board about this. Some of our board members know this, that if they're not home, not answering the door, it's a hit for us. So this statistic, 98.7, is very good, because there's sometimes it's beyond our control what we get measured on. But I do think we all know that it's one of the most important things we can do is get out there and find them, so we try. With great success rate, actually, in my opinion.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
Please.
The neglect piece. I worry about with the hybrid of school and kids being home alone and parents not having to work, if we won't see an uptick in that possibly.
Definitely.
Yeah.
The very last slide, it's the perfect segue into that. In fact, why don't we just turn to that, Commissioner, and look at that. It's the more complicated one, and the title is COVID-19 Child Protection Intakes Received. And really, there's only one reason this is actually kind of hard to decipher. I mean, it's interesting, and I thought the board might want to look at it kind of on your own time. But the reason to include it in the packet, if I could just explain that top bar graph chart. So you'll see along the bottom of the bar chart that has different colors in it, the weeks. It'll be like week 1 through 11. Well, that was the beginning of the year before COVID, and it was actually quite slow. That's an 11-week period. So we've changed our time frames in this chart, so it gets a little complex, a little confusing. But that particular bar chart with 22 cases at the top is over 11 weeks. So that's actually a slow period for us before COVID. Then it actually, stayed slow or went down in March, which is kind of that next, the 12th week through the 15th. That's when COVID starts to show. You follow that bar chart along, and it's pretty flat at the top, 17, 20, in that range, all the way till this last week, when school started, actually the beginning of September, and you'll see that there's 10 cases, but if you look at the time frame, that's 1 week. So if you multiply that times 4, which are most of the other bars, we could be up to 40. So there's a clear spike to your question. It was what we were fearful of, is that there's this backlog. People aren't reporting eyes on. And that is one of the downsides, I have to say. I think, the future and how telework and all that fits into this. But without eyes on, like for the schools or our caseworkers, that's one of the downsides of telework, is that you don't have that ability to see what's going on. That's specific, though, to certain areas, like in financial assistance. There's not much monitoring that we have to do in those areas. But if you get into adult protection, the mental health for both kids and adults, disability services, these are folks where they really do benefit from some of that rapport. And in child protection and adult protection, right to your question, that is the big issue. And our fear, I hate to say it, was realized. I think there's a lot of backlog. And then it's overrepresented by neglect, which was your question. You said, do you think there was neglect? And the answer is obviously by the data, yes, there was neglect going on, and now we're starting to see it. So there's this huge blip up and a wave, if you will, of need that we're going to have to respond to. So, a great question.
On that same slide right there, what do the colors on each county mean on the state map?
That is a good question. Let me see if I can look. I don't know if I even looked at that, Commissioner.
It mentions activity.
Yes.
So is
The
that
color
from,
legend?
is that
Yeah, the
from-
color
above
legend
the-
of the state, yeah.
Right above the map. You make your thing bigger.
So it means that you have more of these in each.
Yeah, I totally, so your question is with the one of the map of Minnesota, like I
Yeah.
get how the color legend goes with the bar chart, that made sense to me, and that's
Yeah,
as deep as I
that's-
looked. I'm very interested in what you're asking about the colors on the map of Minnesota.
Because it doesn't quite
No, it doesn't
coincide
really.
with
Yeah.
the rest of the stuff. I can see what the colors, the color legend goes with the chart
Right.
you just talked about,
Right.
but not on the map. I don't.
And this is
what-
where my color impairment only makes this all the more difficult. But is there any correlation that you guys can see with normal vision between the
No.
change? Do you see the bottom, that doesn't relate either, like how it went up or down in certain areas? Does that correlate with the state of Minnesota map at all?
Well-
all I can see is Hennepin and Ramsey County probably have the darkest blue color,
Right.
which
Yeah.
is probably the most issues happening. And then there's a lighter blue, and then there's a kind of a reddish, which is what Blue Earth County is under, and then there's white.
Gotcha.
But there's a darker reddish color too, so,
Yeah.
maybe
I'll check it out and
somebody
get
could
back
check
to you.
it out.
I'm
Yeah,
sure.
I'm sure if somebody has a color issue with their eyesight, that would
That makes it a lot.
really mess this
I've been
up for you.
Asking my wife a lot of questions. And I'll show you the one that I really get stuck on. If I could back up to the previous slide, and Commissioner, I will send out a response to that. Ann loves it when we show interest in some of that intricacy, and it's a very, very good question and one I did not catch. Backing up to this chart with the 3 pie charts on it, the upper left, you'll see the number of reasons children enter out-of-home placement, and that is 70+% is represented either through parental drug and alcohol abuse, which we are not surprised by, and then also the neglect category. If you're active in your chemicals, it's very hard for those two not to be very similar in their nature, but you'll see that that really is the story, not to take anything away from those other areas where people have struggled, but that's where the volume is. And I'll move to the right on placement expenditure percentages. You'll see again that breakout of foster care being kind of our bread and butter, and we're so grateful to our foster homes that provide this service for us. It's very cost effective, and it's where our volume goes. The more egregious, the higher severity cases are on the left side, and are sent to correctional facilities or residential treatment facilities. I think you all know I have great passion of trying to prevent out-of-home placement, especially those more severe ones, but I really do believe that the kids that do get sent away need stabilization. They're not safe to themselves or the community. It's that level of care. How long we keep them there is my hot issue, is that we manage that care, that we try to get them stable and step them back down. That's the most important piece. And then you'll see the arrow pointing down that those children placed in foster care were placed with relatives 49% of the time, so either their own family or family members, which we put a high value on as well, so it's a familiar setting. Just working in that area in my earlier career, you see how disruptive and kind of the messages that are sent to young people when they can't maintain themselves in their home or their parents aren't able to help them maintain themselves. So I always think that we should not take this work lightly, and when we are able to use foster care, I think that's just such a nice comparative to a facility. And I've been at both of those types of settings, and there's a big difference in how it feels. One feels like a family, one feels more like an institution, or that you're somehow in a congregate setting that feels quite different to especially a child that's been disrupted. And then finally, this is my color challenge chart. That there's one of the things that really threw me, and Kelly was looking at this with me too, is that there's some zeros on the chart, so some that aren't represented on the legend on the right. But the story that I wanted to bring to the board is obviously the 48 cases that have to do with reunification with parent as a reason for children coming out of out-of-home placement. So the first chart was why do they go in? This is why they come out, and how they come out. They come out to their parents most of the time. That's good news. And then the other one that I got confused by is adoptions finalized. The number 21 out of that many cases I thought was really high, and I thought maybe I was looking at the color wrong, and it was about living with other relatives, but actually Ann confirmed that that is adoptions that are finalized. So and she said that's actually not that far off per year of about 20 cases that we get adopted. As you know, it's not easy to do that work, and that's not that I don't think it's a great statistic and a good number, but just that it's so hard to get that all done, and it takes a long, long time. And so if year over year we're in that kind of representation on a pie chart like this, I think it's a really, really good number and a really good kind of picture of how we do that work.
Mr. Chair, and I don't even know if you know the answer to this, but when we talk about those adoptions, are they frequently with some sort of family member?
You know,
Grandparents or something?
Yeah, that does happen, and there's, I mean, Nicole could probably help us with this too, but there's different kinds of legal status that people can look to change legal status within a family, and so that's an option. I would say more typically what happens is we place children in a foster family who decides that they want to adopt.
Okay.
So that, I would say, is that, she's shaking her head, yes, that's probably the most of the case, but everything's so unique, and how we define family, you know, sometimes you're very close to a neighbor who's willing to do it. To me, that's still a family placement in that bigger picture. So I think we try to do what's best for that child, but I think more typically we're in a foster care situation where there's that familial connection and people feel led to say, let's make this a permanent option, which I think is always such a great celebration in an area that's so kind of hard and harsh and negative. There's this picture of adoption that can be quite striking.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's all I had today.
Is that all you have?
Yeah, I love that.
So we get to jump into Kelly's?
Ready for her?
Thank you, Phil.
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, Phil. It's, to fall back on that, Phil, is so interesting because being a former school liaison officer and how important that was part of the work as a school liaison officer is to look at how the children are doing when they're coming into schools, to check on that. You can see them day in and day out, and sometimes you can recognize these things and bring it up. You know, you may not do something personally yourself, but you will bring it up to the school counselor. You can bring it up, and because that's what you do. And so I see this stuff, and I see with the children not being in school and not having the eyesight of the teachers and of the school liaison officers and of the school counselors is so important. So it's we can all wish we can get them back into school as soon as possible.
Right.
And safely.
And safely.
Right, safely.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Thank you, sir. So, good morning. Just an opening comment. I know we sometimes describe the COVID-19 response as a marathon, but boy, it's moving so quickly sometimes it feels more like a sprint. So if we continue describing it as a marathon, I think we're on world record pace to keep up with everything. So, for example, the last time I presented to this board, it was a Tuesday morning, and that afternoon I attended a meeting with our community partners and was advised the state was having our community testing event. So things from the morning to the afternoon moved incredibly quickly. But with one walkthrough at Minnesota's Myers Field House, which of course we used for H1N1, so we were very familiar with the physical plant up there, and 3 virtual planning sessions, the event was held. So, and with 20 Blue Earth County staff from public health, emergency management, and administration, over 300 hours of time and expertise, 1,862 people were tested, and a 2.5% positive rate for tests. And community partnerships were strengthened and deepened with this event. And at the time, I found the last 4 dorm fridges in Mankato to hold the tests. They have been since replenished, but at the time, they were definitely in demand and difficult to find. But we were able to get that supply that was essential for that event.
You really did a nice job with the event. I got tested the first day, and it was really well done. So thank you.
It was, and it was an interesting layout. So again, every time we are involved with or spearhead an event like that, we learn more. I liked how the lanes were set up. I think the what we call the throughput rate was around 10 minutes per person once that initial line got through. So really a quick move through that testing area.
And I was negative. Just thought I'd tell you.
So we also continue.
No quarantine.
No, sorry, sir. All right. So we also continue to work with the state EOC on identifying semi-permanent community testing site. We've been doing that since July. My most recent contact was with Ann O'Connor at the state. She's a Deputy Commissioner of Commerce, and she has identified a couple of key locations that we've provided that hopefully will also work for us in future vaccination clinics. So
Good.
That is going well. Just a little bit of update on the CASPER studies that were completed in our region, or in our community actually. To define it, this is a type of study that provides household level information and provides additional information about a community through collection of population representative data about emerging diseases such as COVID-19. It has been used in the Zika virus and during H1N1 as well, although obviously not in our community. So staff and I worked Tuesday and Wednesday. We found out details on Monday. We worked Tuesday and Wednesday to pull together information on details of that study. We had a lot of questions, including finding out what specific areas of our community we're going to be surveying and they'd be visiting, what types of vehicles, what prior planning they had done. Once we had that specific and detailed information, we of course shared it with our law enforcement and dispatch at the city and at the county level. We made sure that customer service folks knew so that they could respond to calls from the community. Jesse Anderson actually worked really quickly and collaboratively with the city to dovetail our messaging again, so those partnerships that are just going incredibly well. And we avoided some issues other communities had where the teams came in and there was safety concerns from the community, and there was, they arrived in unmarked cars and started going door to door, and dispatch was nowhere, so we were able to really streamline that experience in our community, and are hoping to get community level data back. So I'm working on that as well. Then we also received a draft of the contract for the regional contact tracing and investigation, and I know each time I come here I provide a little different update, but we do have a draft of the contract, so we're hoping in the next couple of weeks that we have a final contract and we are able to be reimbursed for the time that we spend with that activity. And we're looking at around 25 hours of public health time each week for its contact tracing and testing. An additional update, the CDC is working on a web-based mobile application that's being developed specifically for COVID-19 for distribution and administration of vaccines. The system is predicted to provide real-time data, so a little different than our current system. With federal agencies, exchange data with electronic health records, generate reminder letters, search for clinics who are providing the vaccine, schedule appointments, and many other features. No other system has been designed to do this many things, and there's still real-time testing that needs to happen, but the Department of Health is involved with the CDC and looking at that. So another software system, another database that may come into play in this response that we'll need to be aware of and involved with. Moving on to our schools, we talked about schools a little bit earlier in Bill's report, but we're also actively and deeply involved, probably more than we initially thought we would be, in working with the schools on consulting on their learning models and whether to continue to have classes or not have classes depending on the county rates of positive cases. But last week we met with all of our schools that were and had phone conversations and Zoom meetings and all of the different ways we communicate now. And at this point, because of college returning and because of our testing event, our rates went up, and that was expected. So in consultation with local public health, Department of Health, as well as our medical providers and healthcare providers in the community, the decision was made for schools to continue with the learning model that they opened with, monitoring those rates with the expectation over the next few weeks that it will decrease, is what the prediction is. So we'll monitor that very closely.
I have a question. Are you going to need additional staff for the tracing?
How much we commit per county is up to us.
Okay.
I know we've made the decision we want to be part of that,
Yep.
that model and that work. So could we hire additional people to help us with that? It's definitely a conversation we could have.
Just a question. Yeah.
We're also, the South Central Healthcare Coalition, we're also working at influenza, so moving from COVID into influenza, but of course the seasons are going to overlap, the infectious pieces are going to overlap. But the coalition has already put out the toolkit for the year for messaging, so we will be moving along with our community to really encourage influenza vaccinations, which we do every year, but especially this year.
Jack and I both got our flu shots the other day.
Fantastic. So, and in closing, we also continue to provide our other public health services and programs. I just got word yesterday that WIC has another 30-day extension, so they're not going to have to see clients in person and continue to do remote work as well.
Yeah, I got that email from USDA. I was pleased to see that. I hope they're going to do it in some other places too.
It was very clear. It was a very clear end to when that waiver will happen.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for all your work.
Always,
Thank you,
it's
Kelly.
great to keep up on all these issues, and I really appreciate all your work on this.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Can I ask one more question? The saliva test, I know that Duluth is going to be the first one, and they're looking at 10 others. I'm just wondering and the testing is going to happen in Oakdale. I just wondered if.
I have heard nothing that
Okay.
our community is on deck for that, but I also was aware that 2 pharmacies in, I believe, in the Olmsted area were also testing that as well. So there's been more updates on that particular area, and we of course have a number of calls again. Over 25 calls with updates, so this afternoon I may have more information.
I was just kind of curious. We have a SHAC meeting October 5th, so that will be interesting to hear what the commissioner has to say and everybody else.
Yep, we're monitoring that as well.
Yeah.
All right.
Good question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you two very much.
Thanks, Phil.
I think we'll take a quick 10-minute break before we go on here. Bob?
Thank you. I love that.
Bob, there we go. Well, welcome back. We are going to get into administrative services. Bob?
Mr. Chair, the first item is the county board minutes for September 8th.
Move approval with minutes. Landcamer?
People seconds.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Jesse, could you call a roll?
Commissioner Purvis.
Aye.
Commissioner People.
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer.
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder.
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg.
Aye.
Next would be the bills for the 2 weeks indicated.
Purvis moves the bills.
Brunder will second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Let's see. I got a couple. The Henry G. Mergs LLC Maintenance Contract Services. It's for $116,000.
That is seal coating through the Public Works Department.
Okay. And then we get into the second week. And let's see, Mathewitz for $2,284,000. I'm sure that's County Road 1, but I thought I'd ask you.
County Road 10, I think, isn't it,
I think
Bob?
it's 10.
Is that 10?
I think so.
It's actually a little bit of both.
A little
The
bit of
majority of it is County Road 10, that's just over 2 million, and then 200,000 on County Road 1.
All right. And then just below that, OMG Midwest. That's for $887,000.
That is for the overlays done through the Public Works Department as well.
And that's all I had. Anybody else?
The only comment I have is it's nice to see those grants going out to our businesses and the bills. Quick turnaround. So
Yes.
good stuff.
Yeah, very,
Thank
very
you,
good.
Paul, and your staff.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you,
Yeah.
Paul.
I had
So
the
that-
opportunity to speak with several of the small business people that had received them. They were very appreciative.
Yep,
Yep.
they definitely are.
And thanks for the city of Mankato, and to get that partnership together really helps a lot. Thank you very much. All right. Seeing no more discussion on the bills, Jesse, could you call a roll, please?
Commissioner Purvis.
Aye.
Commissioner People.
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer.
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder.
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg.
Aye. Go ahead, Bob.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, item number 7 in your packet is the Human Resources Department agenda. We do have one action item for the board today, and that's authorization for the chair and the county administrator to sign an agreement with the Minnesota Public Employees Association, which are correctional officers in the jail. We were able to reach an agreement with that bargaining group recently on a 2-year agreement for 2021 and 2022. I'll give you a couple of kind of elements of the agreement. In terms of wages, we have a pattern that's been established with other bargaining groups at 2.5% increase in the general wages for 2021, and so that pattern was continued with this bargaining group. But for 2022, we shifted rather than a percentage increase to a flat rate increase, which ended up being 35 cents per hour across the wage scale. So it's given the uncertainties of both the state budget as well as the county budget into future years and the economy in general, we felt that having kind of a flat dollar increase would be better going forward. How long we do those kinds of agreements, or whether we can achieve agreements with other bargaining groups at that level, is yet to be seen, but it is a pretty significant change for the county to move from a percentage to a flat rate increase. Beyond that, there was a slight increase in the shift differential. They had been at 55 cents per hour. We're increasing that to 60 cents per hour, starting 1/1 of 21. And then there were a number of smaller language cleanup types of items, stuff that was stale in terms of dates and stuff that we removed from the contract. But it really were primarily those two wage adjustment items that were different in this agreement.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I like the flat rate as opposed to a percentage. I think that doesn't, change. Sometimes, when you do a percentage, at the high end, you get a lot more money than somebody at the low end. So I really like that. Just thought I'd say that.
Okay.
Well, we've been talking about that very process for years, but just weren't sure how we could get there. So this was a good step forward, but I agree with you.
Yeah.
Clean, that this is a more equitable would maybe be the word. We do have to worry about getting too close together too. So moving forward, we have to be very careful. But I appreciate this bargaining unit coming to the table and talking about that and getting the deal done.
Do we have a motion?
I'll move that we
I'll
approve.
second. We have a motion and we have a second. Any more discussion? Yeah, I think, Kip, to follow what you said is I think you do have to worry about the distance apart on this. It's a good idea, it's good for the county, but you also have to be concerned about the supervisors and stuff, make sure that they have the, their proper wage scale. So, no other discussion. Jesse, could you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Purvis.
Aye.
Commissioner People.
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer.
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder.
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg.
Yes. And now we just have some informational stuff, right, Bob?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. We did fill a couple of custody officer positions, both a full-time position as well as a part-time position. And then we did have a couple of resignations, one a registered nurse in our mental health center, and then taxpayer services specialist position in our property and environmental resources department.
Okay.
Any other questions on the human resources agenda? All right. Mr. Chair and Commissioners, item number 8 in your packet is a resolution as required by Minnesota statute certifying the proposed 2021 property tax levy. Blue Earth County staff began working on the budget in April of this year. Meetings with the department heads were held in June. Work sessions with the Board of Commissioners occurred throughout the summer, resulting in a proposed levy of $40,921,508. This proposed levy is a 5% increase over the levy that was assessed in 2020. Increases in the net tax capacity across the county of 0.9% have been realized, which means a portion of the increased levy will be absorbed by properties with increased values. This proposed increase would lead to an increased tax rate of 43.8% as compared to this current year's rate of 42.09%. I'm recommending the 2021 proposed property tax levy of $40,921,508 be certified to the Blue Earth County Finance Director.
This is Langhammer. I'll move the proposed levy.
Brunder will second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I want to start out that we've worked very hard on this for the last 90 days as a board. And I've always been very supportive of this 5%, the $40,921,000. After getting the COVID money and feeling fairly confident that we can use a lot of that to cover some expenses we've run into over the last year, I am willing to lower this from the 5%. I think we're in a good position. I would like to see about a 2.5% increase at this time. All along our discussions, I was always hoping we could be around that 1 or 2%. But earlier in our discussions, when we had so many uncertainties out there, and I know we still have plenty more out there to deal with. But I am going to, after our discussion, I'm going to make an amendment to the motion for a 2.5% increase.
Okay.
This is Colleen. I think that we can certainly lower it, but this 5% gives us flexibility. We don't make a final decision until December, and we can work it down from there. I guess I'd like to see the flexibility at this point for the simple fact that we don't know what's going to happen at the state, and we're probably not going to know for a long time what the federal government's going to do. So I guess I still support the preliminary levy of 5%, knowing full well that it can be decreased as we continue to work through the budget.
My whole thing here is to make sure we have the proper rule of, on here. Kip, you seconded the motion, and the motion was 5%?
Correct.
I'm not, can Kip put an amendment in because he seconded the motion for 5%, or would somebody else have to do that?
I believe it can.
Okay, that was my, so did I hear an amendment there, Kip, or not?
I wanted to hear the discussion first.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we have the proper, you know.
You're looking at Nicole, I'm assuming.
Nicole, is that fine that Kip makes an amendment after he seconds a motion?
I'm not familiar that it's not fine. I would think that any amendment to the motion would follow the proper process that you normally would, whether he gave the motion or not.
Okay.
Bob, are you?
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the parliamentary procedure at the end of the packet, and I'm not seeing anything that would prevent someone who makes a second to an original motion being prohibited from making a motion to amend that. So I think it really is a case where the second is getting it on the table for discussion, and then it can be looked at for adjustments or amendments.
All right, that's, I just wanted to make sure that our rules were being followed properly. Thank you. Anyone else?
I guess I'd like to share Kip's concern. I think we have a duty to our taxpayers to keep the budget as flat as we can. So I too would support a smaller levy increase.
Mr. Chair, I just have to echo that. I think there's enough there, and considering the times and looking at what other entities they're doing, and I think that we can handle a 2.5 would be ample. So I'd go with lowering our level.
And I just want to reiterate, this is a proposed levy. This
Correct.
is not the
Correct.
final levy. And we have opportunities to continue to work this and get it down to wherever it's appropriate for our communities. So those are my comments.
Nope, yeah, we all understand.
I appreciate what you said, and it is a proposed levy, but it's also on the minds of business owners, homeowners, farmers across the county of what it's going to cost them, and it's a stress level. And if they know that the county board is concerned about them at this time, it might ease some of their stresses. I will, so I'll listen and wait for an amendment.
I don't think there's any doubt that this county board isn't concerned about the people who live in Blue Earth County.
Oh, I agree with you.
I think we're all concerned about that. I think there are unknowns, and we might not know that as of December. But
I agree with you.
I think that it gives us the flexibility. But whatever you decide is fine.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Commissioner Brunder? Bob, what would be the difference cash-wise between a 2.5 and a 5%? I didn't do the math yet.
It appears to be just under $1 million difference.
And if we want to keep our budget the same, I certainly would support using some more reserves to fill this other hole. We have an adequate reserve. And, like I said, I've been supportive of the 5% the whole time. I think it's been good discussion. But at this point, I'm just ready to say that we can manage with the 2.5. And to be honest with you, I'd like to see that get cut even just a little bit more, but we'll leave some room for unknowns until December. And again, just like Colleen said, we don't know what's going to happen in December either. So, but if there's no other discussion, I would make a motion to amend this to 2.5%.
Not second. I'll second that.
And we have a motion, we have a second on the amendment, and discussion on the amendment.
Discussion.
Mr. Chair, I just point out that then the dollar amount becomes $39,947,187.
All right.
The 2.5%.
And again, I appreciate the discussion we've had up until this point. This is always a moving target when we start this process. I think I've been pretty clear that I'd like to see it lowered. I appreciate the board and the staff working to this number, but I'm ready to move on and do 2.5 and try to get it down even more yet if we can, just to help out the taxpayers in Blue Earth County.
Any more discussion? Jesse, could you call the roll on the amendment?
Commissioner Purvis?
Aye.
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
No.
Commissioner Brunder?
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg?
Aye. Now we will fall back to our original motion with the amendment. Any more discussion?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Brunder, again, I certainly will support using reserves to cover this hole. I don't expect the staff to go back and try to cut any more in their line items, so I just thought I'd get that out there. If you can find some other ways to cut the budget, I would appreciate that, but I certainly would support using reserves. Just a thought.
Okay. Any further discussion? Jesse, could you read off the motion
The motion.
and then call the roll?
The motion on the table is to approve the amended levy, the levy with an amended percentage increase of 2.5%.
Okay. And go ahead and call the roll.
Commissioner Purvis?
Aye.
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
No.
Commissioner Brunder?
Aye.
Commissioner Stuenberg?
Aye. All right. Thank you very much. Our
Mr.
next is
Mr. Chair and
the
Commissioners.
proposed budget.
Yes, the next item, number 9 in the packet, is the 2021 proposed budget. Minnesota Statute 375A.06 requires the county administrator to prepare and submit an annual budget and long-range capital expenditure program to the county board. As I mentioned previously, staff have been working on the proposed budget since April of this year, and it has been reviewed numerous times in work sessions with the county board. As such, I am recommending approval of a resolution regarding the 2021 proposed budget, which projects expenditures at, and this will be a revised number from what's in the packet, $114,238,576. I would also point out that the public hearing to discuss the budget will be held on December 1st of this year at 6 p.m. I do anticipate this will be a virtual meeting given the pandemic, but a final decision will be made closer to the date of that meeting.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So the budget then would read 113,782,088? Is that what
No.
I'm,
No, it'll be 114,238,576.
Million.
And the reason
Million.
why that's not the $1 million difference
Okay.
is it relates to how the levy gets allocated to different funds and what those net numbers are. So
Okay.
finance does some calculations, but it doesn't match dollar for dollar for the change in the levy.
okay, thank you.
All right.
But the proposed budget's 114 million
Yes.
and some
Did
change. I thought I heard 1,000 twice, but.
Oh, you probably did, sorry about that.
114 million.
114 million.
Yes, all right, thank you.
All right. And we need a motion on this?
Purvis moves the proposed budget.
Brunder will second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? Jesse, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Purvis?
Aye.
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder?
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg?
Aye. All right. The Sheriff's Office Grant Administration Authorization Resolution.
Well, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, this is a resolution granting authority to the sheriff to sign agreements for grants that will fund activities related towards zero death and DWI enforcement efforts. And so it's an administrative effort to allow us to keep those grant dollars flowing. We have asked the board for this resolution in the past, so it's just renewing that authorization.
I'll move approval.
People second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Besides being a former officer that did both of these programs, which are very positive and gives reinforcement to our Towards Zero Death initiative across the state of Minnesota and right here in Blue Earth County. It's it's a positive thing to get the grant so our sheriff's department can proceed with this. Any other discussion? Jesse, could you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Purvis.
Aye.
Commissioner People.
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer.
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder.
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg.
Aye. And the Business Assistant Grant Program.
Well, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, item number 11 in your packet is a memo regarding the Business Assistance Grant Program. We really have two issues that we would ask the board's feedback and direction on. One is kind of updating the list of eligible applicants and approving some additional grant awards, and then consideration of making some modifications to the criteria to open it up a little broader. So, as the board is aware, back in August, we asked the board to establish this program with set criteria. As of September 8th, we had 113 applications with about $995,000 in grants awarded. And we're currently still receiving grant applications. We do have 8 additional applications. Actually, it's a little larger number now. We have an updated list that was put at your seats earlier this morning. So I believe there's 10 additional grants that we're bringing forward, totaling $76,195.88. And so that would be kind of the first step this morning. So maybe I'll pause there and ask the board if they want to propose a motion to approve those additional grant recipients.
Purvis moves approval.
Brunder will second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? This is very positive towards our business community and our the farmers and business people that can make use of this. They were hurt very hard with COVID, so it's very positive. Any other?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Commissioner Brunder, and again, thank you to Paul Vogel and his staff for processing these. It was made a lot of sense for us to team up with them instead of trying to put a program together for us to administrate this, so I appreciate all their help.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I echo that.
Yep.
I think we all do.
Well, this is just one more thing of our many team efforts between Blue Earth County and the city of Mankato. I don't think it's been noted enough how much the city and the county work together on numerous things throughout the year. And this is just one more of those things that is very positive for the outcome for everybody. Jesse, could you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Purvis.
Aye.
Commissioner People.
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer.
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder.
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg.
Aye. All right.
Then, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, the second kind of component of today really gets into some additional eligibility criteria to expand eligibility to other businesses that either weren't eligible because of specific criteria that we had in place, or other changes that might help us utilize all the funds that have been allocated. And so the memo does kind of outline some potential changes. The most significant probably are those home-based businesses, as well as increasing the number of FTE capacity that would allow additional businesses to be eligible for this grant. We, maybe Mr. Vogel would like to speak to some of the other kind of components that staff have looked at. They've certainly been working directly with the applicants and maybe have some additional suggestions or guidance for the board today.
Board Chair, members of the board, Paul Vogel, Blue Earth County EDA, City of Mankato. There's two specific requests that we would recommend to amend the guidelines. And some of it came up from the comment last time about the Dakota County program, which we did research. One is the home-based businesses. I believe there's approximately over a dozen that have applied that were deemed ineligible because they are a home-based business other than an egg industry. But they're still experiencing those losses. It is lost revenue from a business that they can demonstrate. And then the other was increasing the FTE count from 20 to 50. And that was something that we had gleaned from the guidelines of Dakota County. And the reason we did some research as to why they chose 50, it goes back to the Affordable Care Act, is that businesses over 50 are required to offer certain health care coverages. So there was kind of a definition of what is a small business. The other, so those are, I think, are two main recommendations at this point. If the board would like to consider some additional guideline changes, one would be that necessarily the address of the business is not in Blue Earth County, but they have operations within Blue Earth County. We have seen several small businesses that have, one was a driving school that had a base of operations in Blue Earth County. In addition to other counties, they were still considered a small business. They had loss of revenue within Blue Earth County, but they were ineligible. And then the other is to remove the cap on revenue. You know, as far as a recommendation on that, I think the cap right now is $2.5 million. If that cap was removed, we researched the Dakota County guidelines. They did not really have a cap on revenue, but they still retain the cap on employees, which would define it as that small business and also a business that is doing operations within the county. So at this point, I think the recommendation is to at least move forward with the first two and see what sort of response that we get. Those first two being the home-based businesses, and then increasing the employee cap, and then see what the response is as far as increasing the participation. And then at a later time, if the board would desire, we could take a look at additional program adjustments specifically to those businesses that may have an address outside the county but still have a base of operations in the county, and then the removal of the cap on the revenue. This concludes staff's report.
Thank you, Paul.
This is Colleen Linehammer. I'd like to move the home-based businesses, the permanent FTE from 20 to 50. Plus, I would like to add removing the cap. That's a motion.
Okay.
Purvis seconds.
Yeah.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
So just for clarification, Commissioner Brunder, 1 and 2, and then 2 of the second round?
That's correct.
Okay.
I think the number 1 of the second round, we can address it another date.
In 2 weeks, I think
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
That would be perfect.
Yeah.
And really 2 and 2 almost, I mean, if you're gonna have up to 50 people, the 2.5 million might cap you out. So I think that makes sense to remove that at this point, so I would support that.
So would we be stuck if we remove that 2.5 million cap? I mean, what if we ended up with 3 million? And we don't, I mean, that's over the,
Oh, no, the cap, I think, Commissioner, is just for the revenue from the company, not for money, correct?
oh, the revenue.
That's
Yeah,
revenue
from
from the
the-
company.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And,
This is why we're discussing this.
Yeah.
and I've had calls from people who are just right over the 2.5. And there are small businesses that have really been harmed by COVID. So that's why I suggested the second.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Mr. Chair, I can go with these, but, you know, and even looking at further of businesses that are here that are located elsewhere and have one here at, but we can look at that later.
In the future,
In the
once we see
future,
what we
so.
get.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Brunder here. For that option though, I mean, are you still taking the applications? If you're holding them, so if someone's applying for that and we decide to enact that in 2 weeks, you would have those applications on your desk?
Correct. We're, Commissioner Brunder, we're still accepting applications.
Okay.
Even though they're not technically eligible, we inform them that they're not eligible, but we do encourage them to make an application. So we get an idea also on the base of,
Sure.
of demand, and then ultimately it is the board's prerogative.
And that would make sense. So we could enact that one in 2 weeks or at our next board meeting or 4 weeks, whatever. So
Makes
I think
sense.
that would work out well. Thank you, Paul.
Any more discussion? Jesse, could you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Purvis.
Aye.
Commissioner Pepo.
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer.
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder.
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg.
Aye. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
All right. Anything else, Bob?
That's all I had for you, Mr. Chair.
And we will jump to the commissioners' reports, and I think I'll go right to Mark.
Oh. I usually am first. Let's see, excuse me, September 11th, did have a Gaburba meeting, and that went well. In regards, if you're looking at some Zoom meetings, and then we had a number of people more in, I think, rural areas, it was a little harder, so, but it worked out. Just some computer problems, I think, then. September 14th, regional transportation, that was a planning process for the transit for our area, our region, and they're moving forward, but I think the stumbling or the thing that'll is finding the regional entity to handle the coordinating, so whether it'll be Vine or not, it's, yeah, still looking at it. September 15th was the Regional Economic Alliance annual meeting. That's your Greater Mankato Growth, and that was actually pretty interesting. Had David Schoof giving the lay of the land and how it looks, what it might look like after COVID, and then they had an economic development person from out of state that gave a review of the landscape, and then what the regional entities do with businesses and with growth. It was interesting. And then we had there was a MICA board meeting on the 16th September, and at that point they were talking about our possibilities yet of the legislature with a bonding bill, but I don't think the closer it gets. We sort of was optimistic then, but as it goes on, I'm not sure. It would be good, though, if we could do that, and that particularly for transportation. There's a little bit there for that, so it wouldn't make a difference, but we'll see. That pretty well concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Will?
Okay. On the 10th, I think Kip and I both had the SWCD meeting. On the 14th, I attended the AMC general session and the detox meeting later in the day. And on the 15th, we had a PACE meeting through the Rural Minnesota Energy Board and approved an application for another small business loan. On the 16th, I had a meeting with the MSU Criminal Justice Curriculum Work Group, and we're very close. As a matter of fact, I just got an email this morning. I think we have a final draft on that, so good additions to that. And then on the 17th, on the 18th, and on the 19th, we had the AMC Public Safety Committee meeting. We had some spirited discussion, but we ultimately came up with a platform of things that we hope to propose in the next legislative session. And that brings me to today.
All right. Kip?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a relatively quiet couple weeks, other than dealing with some roads and some drainage issues, but not committee reports, as those are always a topic of interest come fall time. But I did have, as I mentioned already, the SWCD meeting, and And we heard from them a little bit this morning on our joint public hearing for the watershed. Then I had South Central Workforce and MVAC last night, and both those organizations are doing really well. Obviously, South Central Workforce is still not working in person. They're doing everything online. And MVAC also is still remotely working as much as they can, and they don't have any intentions of being back in full force until after the first of the year at this point. We are getting the children back at school. Had the Head Start programs got started. Everything went fairly well there, but they did have one of the classrooms that had to get shut down because of a COVID incident. So got it up and running, and they were just back yesterday, so they were pretty excited. But the kids are excited to be back at school from what it sounds like, and everything seems to be going really well there. So that's my report, Mr. Chair.
All right.
On the 10th was the AMC general meeting, blue ribbon, elections, deficits. I think some really good presentations and conversations. And that evening I zoomed in on the experiences of policing in Greater Mankato and St. Peter. It was interesting. On the 11th, I had the South Central Clean Energy Council. The Nature Conservatory was a presenter, and they talked a lot about renewable energy and different ways that can be used, and also what policy issues need to change for some of that. On the 14th, Minnesota Department of Health had a follow-up meeting from the testing event in Mankato. All the partners were part of that Zoom meeting, and I think it was a good meeting, and we can always learn from anything that goes on, so it's a positive thing. We had our first Health and Human Services Policy Committee meeting that day. Then we had one on the 17th, then we had one on the 18th, and I don't think we're quite done yet. The proposals were a stronger county role on the Health and Human Services budget, more of a partnership with Health and Human Services and the legislature. And the second proposal was the waivers. Then we got into a bunch of different issues, so we're still working on that. On the 15th, the RETA meeting, I thought was excellent. I thought that Janet Ady, I think is her last name, talked about site selection and what you need in your community in order to get businesses.
Quite the speaker.
She was wonderful. I was really impressed with the meeting, so good job to the board, Mark, and GMG. On the 16th, I had the AMC Board of Directors. I know Vance sent that out to all of you. Just a couple things to remember. We're going to have a virtual annual meeting on December 7th. And the decision was made to extend the leadership terms for another year. So everybody who's in place right now on the board, on policy committee chairs, and the
Executive
committee, all will be extended for a year. Those were the two kind of biggest things that came out of that. Yesterday I had Bridging Divides, talking about how do you work together and how do you have discussions and how do you come to consensus, and the importance of communication and having discussions about things well ahead of time. And then I had Finance and Intergovernmental Affairs, which a lot of discussion on market liquidity, which I'm going to get the slides because it's very complex. And then also we were told that OIG has sent out, what's allowable, but they've got contradicting things on how you can allow for health and human services, public safety and public health in the reporting. So it just came out, I just got it from Matt Chase this morning, the new language. I've sent it to Bob, and we'll go from there. I think that's one of the challenges. There's been so many contradictory things, and it changes every week, that it's been challenging for all of us to figure out what's allowable and what's not. And that ends my report, Mr. Chair.
All right. Well, on mine, on the 9th, on Wednesday, at Community Corrections Advisory Board. On Thursday, the 10th, we had a call on Rapidan Dam. That's still proceeding. We have some interest from another company that's interested in taking it over, which is, obviously there's got to be a lot of tests and a lot of things whether they want to do it or not. So that's, that afternoon I had a NACO Transportation Committee conference call, and then that evening I had a Highway 169 Coalition Executive Board call. I didn't get to the AMC opening, but we had a Highway 169 41 ribbon cutting with Congresswoman Angie Craig and Senator Amy Klobuchar. They got that double diamond right up there, and it looks like quite the intersection. You can breeze right through Shakopee there. You don't have to stop, and that's kind of nice. On the 14th, on Monday, we had our AMC Transportation Advisory Committee. And then that afternoon, a Transportation Alliance Board of Directors meeting. On Tuesday, the 15th, let's see, of course, Rita, and you mentioned all the stuff there. That was a really an interesting meeting. Wednesday, the 16th, we had our AMC Board of Directors meeting. Yeah, the only thing I was going to bring up is the extension for the executive board, so I will not be running for second vice president this year. Then on Thursday, we had our AMC Transportation Advisory Committee meeting, and we did and got done with ours to the minute. Right at the end of it, we got done, which was, so we didn't have to go till Friday. Then that evening, we had the 169 Coalition Executive Board meeting. I had a RAC, Rural Action Caucus monthly meeting on Friday. This morning, I had an Airport Commission meeting. So it's been busy, but everything's been done in my office down in my basement. So not a lot of travel time except for the ribbon cutting at 169 and 41. So I think the county is saving money on travel time here this year.
Yes, we are.
This afternoon, we get started with our Washington fly-in. I think both myself and Colleen are flying out to Washington via Zoom.
Is that a new airline?
Yeah, well, it kind of is.
It should be interesting.
It should be interesting because tomorrow morning we have a call in, and I'm starting my trip to the Black Hills, and so I told Mary, I said, well, we're going to be listening to this on the way out there, So I think we have like a 4-hour meeting tomorrow morning, and so and what's kind of interesting, my whole trip out there, I think it takes like about 9 hours, doesn't it, Will, to get out there?
Yeah.
I think we have a couple more meetings we involved there. We have one with Hagedorn's office, one with Klobuchar's office, one with Smith's office. So I'll have to, keep on getting there. And then I have, tomorrow afternoon, I have a MACAC annual meeting. So it's how I'm going to do this, and I know Mary's shaking her head right now. She's saying, but we'll get her done.
Look at all Mary's going to learn.
Yeah.
I think she'll have me put my little ear thing in so I hear it and she doesn't. So
She could have the radio or something on.
Yeah.
But unless anybody else has anything for the good of the county, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Jesse, call a roll.
Commissioner Purvis.
Aye.
Commissioner Peepo.
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer.
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder.
Aye.
Chair Sturenberg.
Aye.